Erica. Welcome back to Maniacal Reader. Today I'm doing my late January wrap-up. I read 11 books in January, so I have a lot to talk about. Let's get to it. The first book I read in January was Bloodlines by Richelle Mead. This is the first book in a YA paranormal fantasy series, and it's the first book in the spin-off series of the Vampire Academy series. This book follows the main character, Sydney Sage, whom we met in the Vampire Academy series. Sydney Sage is an alchemist. It's her responsibility to protect humans from the knowledge of vampires. It's important for humans not to have knowledge of the magical world, so that's her job. This first book introduces us to new characters, as well as old ones that we're familiar with from the Vampire Academy series. This book has a lot to do with Adrian and Sydney. At the end of the Vampire Academy series, we didn't really know where his story would go from here, so I'm glad to see a lot out of him in this series. I liked Adrian from the Vampire Academy series, so I'm glad I got to know him even more through this series. It's Sydney's job to protect Jill Dragonmere, and Jill Dragonmere is a Moroi, but she's also the half-sister of Lissa, whom we met in the Vampire Academy series. Different people are after her Jill because she's related to Lissa, and some people don't want Lissa as the queen of the vampire world. So vampires and alchemists alike have shipped Sydney and Jill off to a boarding school in Palm Springs, California, and it's Sydney's job to protect Jill from not getting killed and just blending in at this human boarding school. In the Vampire Academy series, we saw Sydney not really regard vampires well. In this first book, she's forced to protect Jill, and the two of them sort of form an acquaintance with each other. I did enjoy the plot in this book. It did a good job of introducing us to more of what Sydney does as an alchemist. Sydney's developed a friendship with Adrian, and I could definitely see them growing closer later on in the series. So overall, this was a good introduction to this spin-off, and I enjoyed it a lot. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was The Golden Lily by Richelle Mead. This is the sequel to Bloodlines. In this book, we get more of an explanation of what Sydney's job is like and the way that she's trying to balance her job as an alchemist with her new friendships with these vampire Roy, which she's really come to like. Balancing her job and these new friendships is a struggle for her. We also see her romance with a guy named Bracken in this book, who is so like Sydney, but she finds herself growing more feelings to Adrian in this book. Sydney also possesses human magic because she's an alchemist, and she has this teacher named Mrs. Terwilliger who helps her learn magic ways. I really liked this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The third book I read in January was obviously The Indigo Spell by Richelle Mead. This is the third book in the Bloodlines series. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. This book really elevated the Bloodlines series in my opinion, and there were a lot more twists and turns in terms of the plot and the characters. We see even more romantic tension between Adrian and Sydney in this book. I won't spoil you as to what this book is about since it is the middle of the series, but I'll put my Goodreads review down below in case you guys want to hear more of my thoughts. Next up, I have The Fiery Heart. This is the 4th book in the Bloodlines series. This book did have filler content, but this book really explored Sydney and Adrian's romance now that they're finally together in this book, and I enjoyed every minute of it. This book did definitely set up the plot more going into the next books in the series. I really enjoyed the conclusion of this book as well. Next up, I read Silver Shadows. This is the 5th book in the Bloodlines series. This book was absolutely a whirlwind. There was so much plot happening and a lot of action in this book, which I really loved. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. It was really amazing. I'll put a link to my Goodreads review down below in case you guys want to hear more of my thoughts that are specific to this book. I also read The Ruby Circle. This is the final book in the Bloodlines series. I loved how everything wrapped up in this book, but it was shorter her compared to the final book in the Vampire Academy series. I read somewhere that the reason why this book is so short is because she was pregnant at the time and she had a deadline for this book, so she needed to finish it. I liked how everything in this book wrapped up, and I think it was a good end to this series, but there are some loose ends. But I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it wrapped up quite nicely. Richelle Mead did say that she is planning on revisiting these characters sometime in the future, so I'm not sure if we should expect more books in this world in the future, but if she did write more books, I think I would really love it, because I loved the Vampire Academy series, and I loved that I finally got to the Bloodlines series after waiting a couple of years to finally get to it. I'm so glad that I finally read the Bloodlines series. It's been a reading goal of mine for the past couple of years, and I unfortunately didn't get to it near the end of 2016, so reading the Bloodlines series was one of my first priorities in 2017, so I'm glad that I finally finished reading the series once and for all. It was definitely worth it. I love both the Vampire Academy series and the Bloodlines series, but I can't choose which one is my favorite. They're both great in their own ways. The next book I read after the Bloodlines series was The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. This book was actually a reread for me, since I did read this book in December. I gave this book 3 stars, and after reading this book, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to continue on with the trilogy, but as I was reading the Bloodlines series, I couldn't get the characters from this book out of my head, so that's why I wanted to reread this book to see if I would enjoy it more the second time around and finally finish the trilogy. I found myself liking it more the second time around, and I actually bumped up my rating for this book. I had originally given it 3 stars, but I bumped it up to 4 stars. Like I said in my December wrap-up, the pacing of this book, especially in the beginning, was slow to get into, so it took me a while to get into this book, but I did enjoy the latter half of the book that had more action in it, and I found myself growing more connected to Liam and Ruby's relationship, but I didn't find the other characters quite as appealing as this main romantic relationship. Rereading The Darkest Minds in January only reinforced my desire to finish the trilogy, so naturally I picked up Never Fade by Alexandra Bracken. This is the sequel to The Darkest Minds. I did enjoy this book much more than I did the first one. This book has a lot more action in it, and it has the characters traveling to different places than the first book. I did enjoy meeting the new characters in this book. In this book we meet Cole, who is Liam's brother. Cole wants Ruby to go find Liam. Ruby and Liam were separated at the end of the last book, and Liam is carrying some secret information about the government conspiracy that's happening in this book. So that's the main plot in this second book. This was a really good sequel, and I did enjoy this book a lot more. Next up, I read In the Afterlight. This is the 3rd and final book in the Darkest Minds trilogy. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. Since this is a conclusion to the trilogy, I won't go into too much detail, but I loved how everything wrapped up in this book. This book was definitely a lot more darker and emotional than the previous 2 books in the series. We find that there's a lot of tension between Ruby and Liam in this book. We also find that there's a lot of tension between Liam and Cole in this book, as well as tension between some of the other characters in this book, since they're dealing with a lot on their plate in this final book. There's a lot of action in this book, and I loved the plot. There were no loose ends in the plot, and it was just a great read, a great conclusion to the trilogy. I'm not as emotionally invested in this trilogy as some people are on BookTube. Some people are like crazy for this trilogy, or at least they were a couple of years ago. I just generally liked this trilogy. Next, I read The Rules of Attraction by Simone Alcalis. This is the 2nd book in her Perfect Chemistry trilogy, and this is a YA romance trilogy. This book follows the younger brother of Alex Fuentes, Carlos Fuentes and his romance with a girl named Kara. Carlos has recently moved from Mexico to live with his brother Alex since he's been getting into some gang trouble in Mexico. Carlos meets Kara on his first day at his new school, and Kara is his peer guide. Something happens at Carlos's school that doesn't allow him to live with Alex anymore, but Alex arranges for him to live with one of his former college professors, and that's where Carlos and Kara's relationship developed from there. I really liked this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Carlos is a bad boy, but Kara is a sweet and innocent good girl. So these personalities clash in the beginning, but their feelings eventually grow for each other. I did like this romance a lot more than I did in the previous book because it seemed like I related more to Kara. She was kind of who I was in high school. Carlos seems to be my favorite Fuentes brother, so I enjoyed the romance a lot more in this book. And finally, the last book I read in January was Chain Reaction. This is the 3rd and final book in the Perfect Chemistry trilogy, and this book follows Alex's younger brother, Louis, and his romance with a girl named Nikki Cruz. I really liked reading this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. This book seemed the most original compared to the other 2 books in the series, and it also showed that Louis is very different from his brothers. Carlos and Alex were concerned with gang life and trying to get out of the gang life, but Louis has always been protected from gang life and not really involved with gang life at all. So he's known as the good Fuentes brother, and he is smart and he gets excellent grades in school, so he is very different from his brothers in terms of personality. Louis meets Nikki Cruz at his brother Alex's wedding, and the 2 of them get off on the wrong foot, but they meet each other a couple of years later. Nikki is trying to get over her traumatic event in her past, and because of that traumatic event, she's sort of sworn off a relationship with all guys, but when she bumps into Louis a couple of years later, she can't forget him. I liked the plot in this book, and I was connected to the characters. I really think that they're unique individuals and they fit well together. I did like the plot in this book, and I did like the twists that happened, especially with Louis in this book. Louis has always managed to avoid the gang life, but he finds himself being dragged into it by a friend. As hard as he tries to avoid it, he can't seem to avoid the gang life. I also liked the fact that Alex and Carlos really made a strong appearance in this final book. You really get the sense of familial bonding in this book, which I really appreciated. Those are all of the books that I read in January. Comment down below and tell me which books you read last month. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!